Jack Morgan stood near the edge of the landing dock as the shuttle doors opened. The air smelled strange, full of sweet and sharp scents. It was his first time on the planet Virellia. He was not a diplomat or a leader, just a young technician. Still, he wore his clean uniform and tried to look calm. Bright lights blinked around the large city. Tall towers made of glowing crystal reached into the sky. Strange shapes moved through the air, like birds made of light. Jack walked with a group of Earth visitors, but he stayed quiet. He liked watching more than talking. They entered a grand building where the wedding was to take place. The hall was wide, filled with music that did not come from any visible instruments. The walls sparkled like stars. Jack had never seen anything like it. One of the officers handed him a small silver badge. Jack took it without asking questions. Later, he found out it was a guest badge for the royal wedding. There had been a mix-up in the list, and somehow his name was added. Jack thought of giving it back, but kept it in the end. The next day was the wedding. Everyone wore bright clothes, and there were many different species in the crowd. Jack felt nervous. He had cleaned his boots and shirt twice, stood near the back, hoping to stay unnoticed. The music changed. Everyone stood. A group of guards walked in, wearing golden armor. Then came the king of Virellia. He was tall and serious, with silver skin and long blue robes. Beside him was his daughter, Princess Alira. Her hair was long and purple, her eyes bright blue. She moved with grace and looked calm. Jack watched quietly. He had never seen someone like her. She looked like a dream from a story. The wedding began with lights dancing in the air. The crowd was silent. Then something happened. A glowing orb floated above the crowd. It moved slowly, passing over heads. People watched with wide eyes. The orb stopped in front of Jack. He blinked. It stayed there. He reached out and touched it. The orb turned green and dropped gently into his hands. The music stopped. All eyes were on him. Jack felt his face turn red. He wanted to disappear. The king stood. His voice was strong. He said, "The orb of bonding is chosen." Jack looked around, unsure what to do. Someone whispered, "That means you are chosen for royal bonding." Jack shook his head. He thought it was a mistake. He was just a technician. He had no special skills or rank. Princess Alira stepped forward. She looked at Jack. He tried to speak, but no words came. She smiled gently. "The orb never chooses wrong," she said. Jack wanted to say he was not ready, but something inside him felt calm. The orb was still glowing in his hands. It felt warm. He looked at the princess again. She looked kind, not angry or afraid. The king said, "You are now part of the sacred bond. Our ways are old and respected. You have been chosen." Jack nodded slowly. He did not understand everything, but he felt something important had happened. The rest of the day passed like a dream. He was taken to a special room. People brought him new clothes. They spoke softly and bowed to him. Jack sat alone for a while. He looked at the orb. It was now part of his life. Outside, the music had started again. The wedding would continue, but now it was different. Simple guests from Earth had become more than a visitor. Jack looked out the window. The stars above Virellia were brighter than he had ever seen. He whispered to himself, "What just happened?" And the night sky gave no answer. Jack did not sleep much that night. His room in the palace was large and full of strange lights. The walls changed colors when he walked. Soft music came from somewhere, though he could not see any speakers. Everything felt like a dream. He kept thinking about the orb. Why had it chosen him? He was just a visitor, not a hero or leader. Maybe it had made a mistake. But the faces of the Virellians told a different story. They looked at him with respect, not doubt. In the morning, a soft knock came at the door. A young Virellian guard entered. He had green skin and eyes like glass. He bowed and said, "Princess Alira will see you now." Jack followed the guard through long hallways. The palace was quiet, but light moved through the air like mist. They reached a garden filled with glowing flowers. Alira was there, standing near a silver fountain. She turned and smiled. "You are awake. Thought you might try to run away." Jack gave a small laugh. "I thought about it." She walked closer. "You must have many questions." "I do." "Why me? What does the orb really do?" Alira looked at the sky for a moment. "The orb chooses without asking. looks inside the heart. It sees what people hide. Many fear it, but it always tells the truth. Jack nodded. I cannot say no, you can, but it would hurt our people deeply. The bond is sacred. It links to lives, not just in name, but in spirit. Jack looked down. I never planned to be part of anything like this. Fix machines. I do not belong in a palace. Alira touched a flower. Belonging is not about plans. Sometimes life changes everything in one moment. They sat on a bench. She told him about Virellian ways. The bond between royal partners was more than marriage. It was a symbol of unity. People looked to them for peace and hope. Jack listened. The more she spoke, the more he felt calm. Alira was kind, not cold. She had a sharp mind and a quiet strength. Later, the king invited Jack to the court chamber. Many leaders were there. The king stood and said, "The orb has spoken. Our guest Jack is now bonded to my daughter. By law, he must pass the trial of unity." Jack took a deep breath. What is that? An elder stepped forward. The trial of unity shows the true self. You will face your fears and choices. You cannot hide. Only then can the bond be complete. When tomorrow morning, the meeting ended. Jack walked alone through the palace. He felt many eyes watching. Some were friendly, others cold. A few nobles spoke in low voices. They did not like this. A human in the royal family was new and strange. Jack stopped near a balcony. The city lights were bright. Ships moved across the sky like stars. He closed his eyes. Part of him wanted to run back to his ship and leave. But another part whispered, "Stay." Alira found him there. She stood beside him and said, "You are stronger than you think." Jack looked at her. "How can you trust someone you just met?" She smiled. The orb did. "I will follow its wisdom." They stood in silence. The night was quiet. Far below, people danced and sang. The wedding was still being celebrated. Tomorrow, everything would change again. Jack would face the trial. He did not know what he would see or feel. But for the first time, he felt less afraid. He whispered, "I will try," Alira said. "That is all the orb asks." The stars above them blinked. The wind moved gently through the silver trees. And in that moment, two lives began to move towards something neither of them had planned. The next morning came with soft blue light filling the sky. Jack stood in front of a large crystal chamber. The room was round, the walls glowing with slow-moving lights. Alira stood beside him. She touched his arm and said, "You must go alone. But remember, the trial does not judge, it only shows." He nodded. The door opened. Jack stepped inside. The door closed behind him. The light changed. The room felt warm but empty. Then, without sound or warning, the room shifted. He was no longer in the crystal room, stood on Earth, in the city where he grew up. The streets were dark and rain fell. He saw himself as a boy, sitting alone on the steps of a small house. His clothes were dirty. His face looked tired. Jack remembered that day. His parents had left. He had waited hours for someone to come. No one did. He watched the boy cry. Then the vision changed. He was older now, fixing machines in a dusty workshop. A man yelled at him for a mistake he didn't make. Jack had stayed quiet. He needed the job. Watched himself lower his head and walk away. The scene shifted again. He stood in front of a ship that was about to leave. A friend asked him to stay. Jack had said no. He wanted to go far from everything. He saw the hurt on his friend's face. Had never said goodbye properly. The images faded. Jack stood in silence. He felt sadness, shame, and pain. But he also felt something else. He had kept moving. He had not stopped. He had tried. Then the room changed again. This time he saw the palace. He saw himself talking with Alira, standing in the garden, speaking with the king, holding the orb. His face looked different, stronger, calmer. A voice came, not spoken, but heard in his mind. "You have known pain. You have hidden it, but you've kept walking. That is strength. That is truth." The lights in the chamber rose. The walls turned golden. The door opened. Jack stepped out. Alira waited. She looked at him and smiled. He looked tired, but his eyes were steady. The king stepped forward. "The chamber has spoken. He is ready." That night, the final bond ceremony took place. The court was full. Lights floated above. People watched in silence. Jack walked to the front, wearing simple white robes given by the Virellians. Alira stood beside him. They held hands. A thin silk band wrapped around their wrists, glowing softly. A tall elder spoke words in the Virellian language. The air shimmered with color. The band between their wrists rose and formed a ring of light around them. The crowd watched as the light grew. When it faded, the bond was complete. Jack and Alira were now joined by Virellian law and spirit. The court clapped. Music began. People cheered. Some smiled, some did not, but no one spoke against it. After the ceremony, Jack and Alira stood on a high balcony. The city below was full of light and celebration. "You did well," Alira said. "I feel different," Jack said. "Not in a bad way. Good, because things will change now." Jack nodded. He did not know what the future would be, but he was ready to face it. Behind them, the king watched with quiet pride. But in the shadows of the court, a figure watched with cold eyes, a noble who believed the orb had made a mistake. His thoughts were dark. He did not trust humans. He wanted power for himself. As the celebration continued, a new danger began to grow. But for now, Jack and Alira stood together, unaware of what was coming. The days after the bond ceremony passed quickly. Jack was now a part of the royal family. He attended meetings, met with leaders, and visited schools and factories across Virellia. Alira was always beside him, guiding him through their customs. People were curious about him. Some smiled and greeted him with respect. Others stayed quiet and watched. He tried to stay calm and polite. He did not want to make mistakes. He listened more than he spoke and learned from the way Alira moved and led. The king seemed pleased. He invited Jack to speak at a unity event. Jack gave a short speech about peace between worlds. He spoke from the heart, using simple words. Many people clapped. Even a few older nobles nodded. But not everyone was happy. In the shadows of the palace, Darnix watched. He was a noble with a sharp voice and cold eyes. He believed humans were weak and did not belong in Virellian power. He had dreamed of bonding with Alira, or at least placing someone from his own house beside her. Now that dream was broken. Darnix called a secret meeting with other nobles who felt the same. In a dark room, he spoke in low tones, said, "The orb made a mistake. The humans are not like us. They will ruin our future. We must act." Some agreed. Others stayed quiet. But Darnix began to plan. At the palace, Jack continued his duties. He met with young students and answered their questions. He fixed a broken tool during a factory visit, surprising the workers. Alira laughed and said, "You are still a technician at heart." He smiled. "I like fixing things. It makes me feel useful." "You are more than useful now," she said. That night, a warning came. A palace guard found a strange device near the garden gates. It was a small machine hidden in the ground. Jack looked at it and quickly realized it was not Virellian tech. It was made to block shield systems. He showed it to the king. "This means someone is planning something, maybe inside the palace." The king looked serious. "We must increase our watch." Jack helped the guards place new sensors. He stayed up late checking systems. Alira watched him and said, "You could have stayed quiet, many would." "I will not let harm come to you or your people," he said. The next evening, the palace was attacked. It began with a sudden power cut. Lights went out. A strange sound echoed through the halls. Small flying machines entered through the windows, releasing smoke. Jack grabbed Alira and led her through a side hall. He remembered the guard paths and found a safe room. Along the way, he helped 2 injured servants and guided lost guests. In the control room, he worked with engineers to restore power. He reconnected the shield system and used an old Earth trick to bypass a lock. When the lights came back, the attackers fled. They were dressed like servants, but carried weapons hidden in tools. The king thanked Jack. "You saved lives tonight. You protected our future." Alira looked at him with pride. "You are more Virellian than many born here." Jack said, "I just did what was right." Later, the court held a meeting. The attackers were questioned. They spoke of loyalty to Darnix. He was arrested and brought forward. Darnix stood tall. "I only wanted to protect our ways." The king replied, "Your way was fear and hate. That is not our path." Darnix was removed from the council. His followers stepped back in silence. Peace returned to the palace, but everyone knew it had come at a price. Trust had been broken. Jack had proven himself in the face of danger, and while some still watched him with doubt, many now saw a human not as a stranger, but as someone who stood beside them when it mattered most. Weeks passed after the attack on the palace. Repairs were made. Security became tighter, but people felt safer now. They remembered how Jack had helped. They spoke of his actions with respect. Jack began to feel more at home. He was still learning the ways of Virellia, but each day he understood more. He walked through the city without guards now. People waved and smiled. Children ran to him and asked questions. He answered with a smile. Alira often walked beside him. They visited schools and farms. They listened to the people. Jack said, "Earth and Virellia are different, but we both want peace, family, and hope." One morning, the king called Jack and Alira to his private hall. He looked older and more tired. He said, "My time as ruler is ending. It is time for new leaders to guide Virellia." Jack was surprised. "Me, yes, the people trust you. You faced danger. You acted with heart. You and Alira will lead together." Alira did not seem shocked. She had known this day would come. She looked at Jack. "Are you ready, Jack?" Took a deep breath. "I do not know everything, but I will try." A large ceremony was planned. Leaders from other planets came. The halls were filled with guests. Jack wore new royal robes, made of blue and silver cloth. Alira stood tall beside him. The bond ring between them glowed again. The king placed a crystal crown on Alira's head, then turned to Jack and did the same. The people cheered. Music filled the air. Sky above the palace lit with colors. Later, Jack stood at the edge of the balcony, looking over the crowd. He saw faces from many worlds. Humans, Virellians, and others stood together. He felt the weight of his new role, but he also felt proud. Alira joined him. "This is only the beginning." He nodded. "We build from here." The next months were busy. Jack helped improve transport systems and energy lines. He brought new ideas from Earth. Alira worked on education and peace talks. Together, they solved problems. They disagreed sometimes, but always listened. Jack spoke to young students and told them his story. "I came here by mistake, but maybe it was not a mistake at all. Maybe the orb knew something I did not." His words spread. People in far cities began to believe in the bond between Earth and Virellia. Trade grew. Travel opened. The two worlds moved closer. One day, Jack and Alira stood in the garden where they had first spoken after the orb chose him. The flowers glowed as they always did. "Do you ever miss Earth?" she asked. "Sometimes, but now, this is home too. You have changed us, Jack, and we changed you." He smiled. "I think that is what unity means." From above, the stars watched. The future was not written, but it was theirs to shape. A technician from Earth and a princess from Virellia had become leaders, not by force, but by chance, courage, and choice. And as the wind moved gently through the garden trees, they stood side by side, ready for whatever came next.